We can debate, because once you start calling people Nazis, we really have no choice but to start shooting them.
I don't think that's true, actually. Up next, we're going to check in with the one and only Tucker Carlson, who is continuing to ruffle people's feathers and engage in the online intra-civil rights civil war discourse between the classic conservatives and the new nationalists and the edgelords and the establishment and all of this. Well, Tucker has weighed in on his podcast and made some kind of outlandish accusations in response to the pushback he's been getting after interviewing alt-right superstar Nick Fuentes and essentially just tongue-bathing him for over an hour with very minimal pushback, not really highlighting Nick's extremist and hateful statements or pushing back on much that he said. Well, Tucker is now essentially saying that people who call Nick Fuentes a Nazi or other people in this like fringe right space Nazis are inciting violence. I'm not kidding. That's actually what he's saying now. Let's take a look at Tucker's latest comments, which I'm not a fan of, as you will come to see, but let's take a look.
We can debate, because once you start calling people Nazis, we really have no choice but to start shooting them.
I don't think that's true, actually. Now, look, I've been very open about the fact that I think the accusation of Nazi and the invocation of Hitler-esque rhetoric is wildly overblown and overdone when it comes to Trump or just Republicans, even dating back to like Mitt Romney and the alarmist rhetoric about mainstream conservatives. But you still do need to be able to call actual neo-Nazis Nazis. And I reject the idea that calling someone a Nazi or an extreme name means you are advocating for violence against them. I mean, you look at the work of someone like Daryl Davis, who has gone around converting literal Klan members, who I don't think anyone can really deny are Nazis, and helping them see the light as a black man just by talking to them and meeting them and guiding them away from their hateful beliefs. Simply calling someone a Nazi doesn't mean you want them killed. It can well mean that you want them condemned and convinced of the better of their ways, or even ostracized and sanctioned, but not literally socially sanctioned, but not literally killed or harmed just for their beliefs. This seems like a straw man, and it's all being done, again, to protect Tucker and Nick Fuentes, who we just fawningly interviewed, from accurate criticisms. So I'm not a big fan of this already.
Shooting them. To be Dietrich Bonhoeffer and sort of reach the end of reason or even Christianity. Bonhoeffer decided Christianity's not even, he was a Lutheran pastor. Christianity's not enough. We have to kill the guy.
He's talking about somebody who wanted to kill Hitler, by the way, which is not just, okay, you could debate the ethics of killing Hitler. I probably actually think you would be justified because he was killing millions of people. He wasn't just having opinions or saying hateful things. That's obviously not justified to harm someone simply for saying that. But calling someone a Nazi is simply saying they support those ideas. It's not the same thing as, therefore, it's like Hitler and people want to kill Hitler to stop him from killing all the innocent people. Well, no, because there's a difference between somebody just believing things and somebody implementing atrocities at mass scale. So,
I'm not judging Bonhoeffer, who was a great man in some ways, but that's inevitable once we decide that people are Nazis. So you kind of have to wonder why they're doing this. And of course, it's because when you call someone a Nazi, and maybe in Mark Levin's case, he believes it, you immediately freeze them in the headlights of your slur.
So I will say this. He made these comments in the context of pushing back on conservative commentator Mark Levin, who is one of those people who just calls everyone a Nazi willy-nilly. And I think that is despicable and is being weaponized to shut down legitimate debate and discourse, as well as some accusations of anti-Semitism are often used to shut down people who are just criticizing Israel or what have you. But there's also truth to the fact that some people who are obsessed with Israel or hate or critical or part of this movement also do hate Jewish people and are obsessed with these anti-Semitic or motivated by anti-Semitic beliefs. And your failure to police that actually hurts your ability to have these debates or discourses. You should be gatekeeping your own side of this conversation. Now, I also don't support Mark Levin just calling everyone a Nazi who questions things. And I think he's deranged in his own right. But then to say, well, you can't call anyone a Nazi or you want them killed. What about the literal Nazis, Tucker? What about the people like Nick Fuentes who say, I love Hitler. I'm Team Hitler. Like, if you can't call that person a Nazi, you can't call anyone a Nazi. And I'm sorry, but I won't accept this rhetorical framing that outlaws the observation of a fact. The same way I won't with like radical trans activists where like, you can't say trans women are men. That's hate speech. A fact or an observation that is objectively true and provable and verifiable cannot be in any honest conversation or discourse rendered unutterable. That's not okay to do. That's your own attempt to shut down debate and discourse and skirt out of the criticism you are rightly receiving for conducting a horrifically softball interview with a noxious figure. That's what I think he's doing here.
Your slur. Nazi. You deter people from arguing with you because no one wants to be called a Nazi. But you also, for the bystanders who aren't even directly part of the debate, you draw their attention away from what the debate is actually about. In other words, for every moment that we're arguing about who is and who is not a Nazi, answer really nobody. The Nazis have been gone for 80 years. Sorry.
Again, I think it is fair to call the people who say they love Hitler and hate Jews Nazis. I do. And I don't think just because they're not literally a part of the Nazi party, which no longer exists, doesn't mean you can't say they espouse those kinds of beliefs when they do.
Right. But for every moment where they're having that debate, we're not debating the things we ought to be debating. In this case, should we use military force on behalf of a small country and totally irrelevant country?
See, the flip side of that, though, is that the reason we're struggling to have honest and open debates about these questions is also partly because the people on that side of the debate are refusing to condemn or separate themselves from actual hateful extremists. So yes, Nazi accusations of anti-Semitism are sometimes used to shut down legitimate discourse and debate. I absolutely acknowledge that. But the flip side of that equation is that that's partly your own fault for refusing to gatekeep this movement out of the people who say they love Hitler. Yes, some people are going to distract from your position when you have aligned that position with the I love Hitler crowd. And is that totally fair? Maybe not, but it's also kind of your fault too, Tucker, and of the others of your ilk. Like maybe gatekeep your side so that can't be effectively done to you. But he would rather wax poetic and just say, if you call anyone a Nazi, you're calling for them to be killed, even though that's obviously not true.
Country? That's a fair debate. We're not having that debate. We're screaming about who is a Nazi, who's not a Nazi. So I guess the thing that we can learn from Mark Levin in this case is if you have a position, argue that position. Levin doesn't want to argue his position. It's very hard to defend, so he won't defend it. He'll just attack. But the rest of us who have a sincere position about America's relationship with Israel and the damage it has done to the Trump coalition, which we're watching it be destroyed, very unfortunately, those people should argue what they believe and not get caught in this trap of identity politics. Who's a Nazi who has a right to speak? Buzz off.
I don't really think calling people who love Hitler Nazis is identity politics, Tucker. And I actually agree with his idea that rather than ad hominem, we should address the substance of the issues. But like loving Hitler and hating Jewish people are substantive positions that people can and should object to. And what's more, it is funny to see him say, like, stop the ad hominem and focus on the position. In this same video, he called Ben Shapiro a communist, which whatever you feel about Ben Shapiro is obviously not correct or true. And he regularly implies that people on the other side of the issue hate America, are actually loyal to Israel. And look, I mean, there's a select few cases where maybe that's true, but again, it's not engaging with the substance of their positions. And so he's very much guilty of this. But it is funny because he is accusing the other side of weaponizing accusations and claims to try to shut down debate. But is that not exactly what Tucker is doing when he conflates our criticism of Nick Fuentes as a Nazi with calling for violence, even though we're not calling for violence. I think that's exactly what he's doing. And it's interesting how he doesn't seem to apply that to the many people who on the right who have made overwrought and hysterical Nazi comparisons over the years. I mean, you have the Ann Coulter, Glenn Beck, Bill O'Reillys of the world talking about Obama in terms of a Nazi regime. You can find examples of that all over internet archives and video clips. And I don't think that was responsible rhetoric. I think that was overwrought and hyperbolic, but I don't think anybody honestly could say they were calling for violence against Obama. But that's the logic Tucker is espousing here. Again, to shut down observation of the fact that he interviewed someone who is a neo-Nazi and basically just did PR for him and didn't push back. So it's like he is, ironically enough, I think, attempting to deflect away from the poor quality of his own journalism and work by shutting down debate with reverse deflections and complaints. And it does give a shield to extremists if you buy into this framing. It's like, oh, well, people use racism allegations to shut down debate. People call people racist who aren't racist. That's true. Absolutely. Doesn't mean we can't call actually racist people racist. And we can't call that out or shouldn't just because it is often abused and isn't usually true. Well, no, because then you're giving a shield to people who actually are the thing. You're saying they can do whatever they want and we can't actually name it because that's been overused or weaponized or isn't literally true. I'm sorry, I don't accept that framing, not even for a second. And I don't think Tucker Carlson would have accepted that framing until it became convenient or expedient for him to do so in this particular debate and discourse. Honestly, I was speaking recently with somebody who knows Tucker and goes back years, and it seems to him and to me that he is just intentionally courting controversy and trying to, he just did an episode about chemtrails, which I don't know much about, but a lot of what he included or said in the episode has already been debunked and fact-checked. It seems that he is intentionally poking the bear and trying to rile people up so that people pay attention to him. And I guess that works, but I'm not sure it's really an ethical or sound or constructive approach to political media and dialogue. That's my take, at least. But you guys will have to let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Hit the like button while you're at it. And do remember to rate and review the podcast on Apple, iHeart, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And with that, guys, that'll be it for today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. And we will talk again real soon.